The alien queen was almost dead after giving birth to 4 babies, but the last human chose to save them. Rain hammered the old barn roof like bullets from heaven. Wind screamed through the cracks in the wood, carrying dust, cold mist, and the smell of distant lightning across the empty frontier valley. Outside, the world looked dead. Mud swallowed the ground. Broken fence posts leaned sideways in the storm. Far beyond the hills, abandoned wind towers blinked weakly beneath the black sky like dying stars. The last human walked through the rain alone. His broad shoulders were soaked beneath the storm. A hunting rifle rested against his back while an oil lantern swung from his rough hand, throwing pale gold light across the mud. His beard was wet. His dark hair clung to his forehead. Weeks of hunting beyond the wastelands had left exhaustion carved deep into his face. He had not spoken to another living soul in nearly 3 months. The barn doors groaned as he shoved them open. The smell hit him first. Blood. Wet hay. Burned metal. Then came the sound. A baby crying. He froze instantly. The lantern light shook slightly in his hand as another cry echoed through the darkness. Thin. Weak. Desperate. His fingers tightened around the lantern handle. Slowly he stepped inside. Lightning flashed through the broken roof overhead, and the entire barn lit up white. A woman lay in the center of the hay. No, not a woman. An alien. Her skin glowed faint emerald beneath the storm light, slick with sweat and rainwater. Long dark green hair stuck to her pale face in tangled strands. Her breathing was shallow and uneven, barely visible beneath the blood-stained cloth wrapped around her body. One trembling hand rested protectively across 4 tiny newborn babies crying against her chest. The man stopped breathing for a moment. 4 children. 4 alien infants. Small glowing markings shimmered faintly across their soft green skin as they cried into the freezing night air. Strange blue lanterns surrounded them in a circle, their ghostly glow painting the barn walls in cold color. Symbols unknown to humanity pulsed softly across the metal frames. The alien woman slowly lifted her head. Her eyes barely opened. Pain lived inside them. Not fear. Not anger. Just exhaustion. Near death. A thin silver crown rested crookedly against her forehead beneath wet strands of hair. The human's expression darkened instantly. Royalty. He knew enough about alien empires to recognize that. Old memories clawed their way back into his mind before he could stop them. Burning human cities beneath alien warships. Screaming civilians running through fire. Bodies buried beneath collapsed steel. The war that erased mankind from the stars. His jaw tightened. His hand slowly drifted toward the revolver on his belt. The alien queen noticed. Weak panic crossed her face. Her body tried to move protectively toward the babies, but pain shot through her instantly. A broken gasp escaped her lips. She was too weak even to sit upright. One of the infants cried louder. The sound echoed through the empty barn. The human stared down at them silently while rain poured through the roof behind him. This was not his problem. These creatures had taken everything from humanity. From him. He could leave right now. By morning, the storm and cold would finish what childbirth had started. No suffering. No mercy. Just nature deciding the end. The human took one slow step backward toward the barn door. Then something tiny wrapped around his finger. He looked down. One newborn baby had reached toward him blindly through the blanket. Its tiny green hand gripped his rough finger with surprising strength. The child stopped crying instantly. For a moment, the barn became quiet except for rain. The human stared at the infant. The baby stared back with glowing silver eyes that had not yet learned hatred. A weak voice suddenly broke the silence. "Please!" The alien queen's lips trembled. Her voice sounded cracked and fading. "Save them!" The words were broken, difficult, spoken in old human language. Then blood touched her lips. Her head collapsed sideways into the hay. The babies began crying again. The storm roared louder overhead as icy rainwater dripped through the roof onto the floor around them. The human stood completely still. Every instinct inside him screamed to walk away. But another part of him, the part not yet buried beneath years of loneliness and grief, refused to move. He cursed quietly beneath his breath. Then he knelt beside the nearest infant. The baby was freezing, tiny hands trembling. Without thinking further, the man removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around all 4 newborns together. He lifted them carefully into his arms, awkwardly at first, like someone who had never held children before. The queen remained unconscious beside him. Her breathing had become dangerously faint. The human looked toward the dying fire pit in the corner of the barn. Then toward his pack. His emergency supplies. The last of his dry wood. Food meant to keep himself alive through winter. For several long seconds he simply stared at it. Outside, thunder shook the valley. Finally, he exhaled heavily. Damn it! He carried the babies toward the fire. One by one, he fed precious dry wood into the flames until warmth slowly filled the freezing barn. The newborn's cries softened slightly beneath his coat. The human returned to the queen afterward. Up close, she looked even worse. Her skin had lost much of its glow. Sweat covered her body. Her hands trembled weakly against the blood-stained hay. Death was close. Very close. The human grabbed an old blanket from nearby and carefully covered her shaking body. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. At the enemy he should have hated. At the mother who had crossed half the galaxy just to keep her children alive. Lightning flashed again across the barn walls. The human lowered himself beside her near the firelight. Then, quietly, almost angrily, he spoke into the storm. I don't know why I'm doing this. He reached for clean water beside the fire. But you're not dying tonight. Morning arrived slowly beneath heavy gray clouds. Rainwater still dripped through the barn roof in uneven rhythms while cold wind moved softly through the wooden cracks. The storm had weakened, but the world outside remained drowned in mud and silence. Inside the barn, the fire still burned. The human had not slept. Dark exhaustion hung beneath his eyes as he sat beside the flames, sharpening a hunting knife against the whetstone. Steam rose faintly from his damp clothes. Every few seconds, his gaze drifted toward the corner of the barn. Toward the alien children. The 4 newborns slept together beneath thick blankets inside an old wooden feed box he had cleaned during the night. Their tiny glowing bodies curled against one another for warmth. Soft silver markings pulsed faintly across their skin with each breath. One of them suddenly stirred. A tiny cry escaped her lips. The human immediately looked over. The smallest child blinked open glowing silver eyes and stretched her little hands weakly into the air. He hesitated. Then awkwardly stood and walked toward her. All right, he muttered quietly. Carefully, he lifted the infant into his large arms. The baby stopped crying almost instantly. That surprised him. The child pressed herself weakly against his chest as though she already recognized safety there. The human frowned slightly at that. You don't even know what I am, he whispered. Across the barn, a soft movement suddenly froze him. The alien queen was awake. She lay motionless beneath the blankets, staring directly at him through strands of dark green hair. Her pale face looked hollow with exhaustion. Sweat still glistened across her skin. But fear had returned to her eyes now. Sharp. Protective. Alive. Her gaze immediately locked onto the infant in his arms. The human slowly stood. For several seconds neither spoke. The queen tried weakly to push herself upright, but pain instantly twisted across her face. A broken gasp escaped her lips as her body trembled violently from the effort. Don't move, the human said firmly. She ignored him. Where are they? She whispered painfully. The babies suddenly began crying together at the sound of her voice. Panic flooded her expression. The human carefully stepped aside so she could see them safely wrapped beside the fire. The queen's entire body relaxed in relief. Tears filled her eyes instantly. For a long moment, she simply stared at her children breathing peacefully beneath the blankets. Then her gaze slowly returned to the human. You saved them, she whispered. The human shrugged coldly and handed the infant back toward her. They were freezing. The queen carefully held the child against her chest with trembling arms. The newborn instantly quieted beneath her touch. Silence settled between them again. Only the sound of rain and fire remained. Finally, the queen looked up cautiously. Why? The question lingered heavily in the air. The human understood what she truly meant. Why save aliens? Why save her? His jaw tightened slightly. Still trying to figure that out myself. The queen lowered her eyes. For the first time, she noticed the old military tags hanging around his neck beneath his shirt. Human military tags. Very old. Very worn. Understanding slowly crossed her face. You fought in the war. The human's expression hardened immediately. I survived it. The queen became quiet after that. A painful silence filled the barn. Then softly, almost ashamed, she whispered, My people destroyed your world. The human looked toward the fire instead of answering. Outside, distant thunder rolled across the mountains. Hours passed slowly after that. The human hunted through the muddy hills while the queen rested with the children near the fire. He returned carrying supplies scavenged from abandoned settlements, medicine, dry milk powder, old blankets, water filters. Everything humanity had left behind now belonged to ghosts. When night fell again, the babies cried endlessly from hunger. The queen tried feeding them herself, but exhaustion kept causing her body to fail. Her hands shook violently each time she held them too long. Without speaking, the human began helping. He warmed cloth near the fire, prepared feeding bottles from salvaged supplies, rocked crying infants against his chest while pacing the barn through the freezing night. At first, the queen watched him with suspicion, then confusion, then something softer. Because this man, the last surviving human in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, handled her children with impossible gentleness. Days passed. The queen slowly regained enough strength to sit upright beside the fire. The babies grew calmer. The barn no longer sounded like a place of death. One evening, the human sat preparing tiny blankets beneath lantern light, while the children slept beside him. The queen watched silently from across the fire. You should hate us, she finally said quietly. The human kept stitching. I do. Her expression tightened slightly. But not them, he added. The queen lowered her eyes toward her sleeping children. For the first time since arriving at the barn, her face softened completely. My daughters have never seen war, she whispered. I wanted it to stay that way. The human glanced toward her. Daughters? The queen nodded weakly. All four. The smallest baby suddenly grabbed the human's thumb while sleeping. The queen noticed. A faint, tired smile touched her lips for the very first time. You make them feel safe. The human looked uncomfortable hearing that. I'm not exactly built for raising children. You stay, she replied softly. Most wouldn't. Silence followed again. Then the queen finally revealed the truth. Her name. Her empire. Her throne. She had not been merely royalty. She had been the ruling queen of one of the most feared alien dynasties in the galaxy. But when military leaders demanded the extermination of remaining humans after the war, she refused. That refusal became betrayal. Civil war erupted inside the empire. Her own commander, a ruthless warlord named Valor, attempted to seize the throne by murdering her unborn children before they could inherit royal blood rights. She escaped while pregnant. Alone. Hunted across worlds. The human listened silently beside the fire. You crossed the galaxy for them? He finally asked. The queen nodded. A mother crosses anything for her children. The words lingered heavily in the barn. The human looked toward the sleeping babies. For the first time in years, something unfamiliar moved quietly inside him. Not hatred. Not grief. Something warmer. Then suddenly, the queen froze. Her expression drained of color instantly. Outside the barn, distant lights flickered across the mountains. Blue. Cold. Moving. The human stood immediately. What is it? The queen's voice became barely more than a whisper. They found us. The human stepped toward the barn door and looked into the storm-dark horizon. Far away beyond the hills, glowing symbols burned faintly against the night sky. Ships. Alien ships. The queen clutched one of the babies tightly against her chest as fear overtook her face completely. "They'll kill the children," she whispered shakily. "They'll make examples of them." The babies began crying from her panic. The human stared at the distant lights silently. Then he walked toward the old weapon cabinet beside the barn wall. Rusty rifles. A revolver. Boxes of aging ammunition. The queen looked up at him in horror. "You cannot fight them." The human calmly loaded bullets into the revolver cylinder. "She's right," he muttered quietly to himself. "Probably can't." The queen's eyes filled with desperate tears. "You must leave before they arrive. Take supplies and go. Save yourself." The human shut the revolver firmly. Then he walked toward the barn doors and locked them with a heavy iron chain. Rain pounded outside. The babies cried softly behind him. The queen stared at him in stunned silence. The human turned back toward her, shadowed by lantern light and storm. His voice came low and steady. "I already lost one world." He picked up the rifle. "I'm not letting them take another family from me." The storm returned with fury before midnight. Rain crashed against the ranch like an ocean trying to tear the world apart. Wind screamed across the empty valley, rattling broken fences and shaking the barn walls hard enough to make dust fall from the ceiling beams. Inside, the fire burned low. The 4 alien infants slept together beneath blankets near the warmth, unaware that death was descending from the sky. The human stood near the barn doors loading ammunition into an old rifle with calm, practiced hands. Metal clicked softly, one bullet at a time. Across the room, the alien queen struggled to stand despite the pain tearing through her weakened body. Sweat glistened across her emerald skin. Her long dark hair hung loose around her exhausted face as she held one sleeping child protectively against her chest. "You cannot stop them," she whispered again. The human never looked up. "Wasn't planning to stop them." Thunder shook the barn. He finally lifted his eyes toward her. "Just planning to make them regret coming here." Before the queen could answer, the entire valley lit up blue. A massive humming vibration rolled across the ground. The babies instantly began crying. The human moved toward the barn window. And there they were. 3 enormous alien warships descended slowly through the storm clouds like iron gods returning to claim judgment. Their glowing engines illuminated the rain in ghostly blue light, while search beams swept across the ranch below. Mud rippled beneath the ships. The barn trembled violently. Then smaller transport crafts descended beside the ranch house one after another. Soldiers emerged from the smoke. Tall armored figures carrying glowing rifles advanced through the rain in perfect formation. The queen's face went pale with terror. "No," she whispered weakly. "Valor came himself?" The human grabbed his rifle tightly. "Who?" The barn suddenly echoed with a deep metallic voice from outside. "Your Majesty," the voice called through the storm. "Cold. Cruel. Patient. Step outside willingly, and your children will die quickly." The queen closed her eyes in horror. The human looked through the rain-covered window and saw him standing beneath the floodlights. Valor. The alien warlord towered above the soldiers around him. Black armor covered his enormous frame, glowing faintly with crimson symbols. Rain rolled down his silver hair while a long energy blade rested calmly at his side. His expression carried no mercy. Only ownership. "She betrayed the Empire for animals," Valor announced loudly to his soldiers. "And now she hides among dirt and insects." The human quietly opened the rifle chamber again and checked the bullets. The queen looked toward him desperately. "You don't understand what he is. Don't need to. He slaughtered entire planets." The human shut the rifle chamber. "So did your empire." The queen lowered her eyes painfully. Outside, Valor took another slow step forward through the rain. "You cannot protect them forever, human," he called. "Your species already lost." The human's face hardened. Something dangerous moved quietly behind his eyes now. Not fear. Not hesitation. Rage. Years of buried rage. He opened the barn door halfway and stepped outside into the storm. Rain instantly soaked him. The lantern light behind him cast his broad silhouette against the darkness while thunder rolled overhead. Dozens of alien rifles immediately aimed at his chest. Valor studied him curiously. "The last human," the warlord said softly. "I expected something greater." The human rested the rifle calmly against his shoulder. "And I expected uglier." Several soldiers shifted angrily. Valor simply smiled. "You defend creatures who exterminated your kind." The human stared through the rain without blinking. "Not defending empires tonight." His voice lowered. "Just babies." For the first time, Valor's expression darkened slightly. Inside the barn, the queen watched from the shadows with trembling breath. No one had ever stood against Valor for her. No one. The warlord slowly drew his glowing blade. "Then die with them." Everything exploded at once. Gunfire erupted across the ranch in blinding flashes of light. The human fired first. One alien soldier collapsed into the mud before the others even reacted. Then chaos consumed the valley. Energy blasts tore through wooden fences. Rain hissed against glowing plasma fire. Explosions shattered the old ranch house windows behind the barn. The human moved through the storm like a man already dead. Precise. Relentless. Years of survival had carved violence into his bones. He fired from behind wagon wreckage, reloaded beneath rainwater, and dragged burning debris into defensive positions while enemy soldiers advanced from every direction. Inside the barn, the queen struggled to calm the screaming babies while explosions shook the walls around them. Then the barn doors burst open. 2 alien soldiers charged inside. The queen grabbed a broken farming tool desperately, shielding the infants behind her weakened body. Before the soldiers reached her, a shotgun blast thundered through the barn. The human appeared behind them. Both soldiers collapsed instantly. Blood mixed with rainwater across the hay floor. The human stumbled slightly afterward. A deep burn wound smoked across his shoulder where plasma fire had struck him outside. The queen stared at the injury in horror. "You're hurt." "I noticed." Another explosion rocked the barn violently. Wood splintered overhead. The babies cried louder. The queen suddenly grabbed his arm tightly. "You must take them and run." The human looked at her. "And you?" "They want me alive," she whispered painfully. "I can buy time." The human already knew what that meant. Surrender. Execution. He shook his head immediately. "Not happening." Before she could argue, one of the babies suddenly began glowing. The smallest daughter. Silver light pulsed from beneath her skin brighter and brighter until the entire barn filled with radiant energy. Strange symbols spiraled through the air around her tiny body. The queen's eyes widened in shock. "No!" Outside, every alien soldier froze. Valor turned instantly toward the barn. Fear crossed his face for the first time. "The air awakened," the queen whispered. A massive shockwave exploded outward from the barn. Light tore through the storm clouds above the valley. Far beyond the mountains, hidden signals suddenly awakened across the sky. Then new ships appeared. Hundreds of them. Silver warships descended through the clouds bearing the royal crest of the queen. Valor's soldiers panicked immediately. "They found her!" Royal forces crashed into the valley like thunder itself. Explosions consumed the battlefield. The warlord roared furiously before retreating toward his transport ship as royal soldiers overwhelmed his army from every direction. The battle ended almost as quickly as it began. Silence slowly returned beneath the rain. Inside the ruined barn, the human collapsed to one knee. Blood soaked through his side now. The rifle slipped weakly from his hand. The queen rushed toward him despite her own pain. "You fool!" she whispered shakily, tears filling her glowing eyes. "Why would you do this?" The human tried to laugh softly. "Didn't want the kids growing up ugly." The queen broke completely then. For the first time in years, she cried openly. Not as a queen. Not as a ruler. only as a mother kneeling beside the man who chose to save her children when the entire galaxy wanted them dead. The babies crawled weakly toward him through the blankets, crying softly until tiny hands pressed against his arms and chest. The human looked down at them with fading strength, then finally smiled. Weeks later, sunlight touched the valley again. The storms were gone. Grass slowly returned across the muddy hills surrounding the ranch. Royal guards repaired broken fences while silver alien ships rested peacefully in distant fields. But the old barn still remained standing. The human stood outside beneath the golden sunrise, holding the smallest child carefully against his chest. Her silver eyes reflected the morning light, while tiny fingers curled around his beard. Behind him, the queen stepped quietly into the doorway wearing simple clothes instead of royal robes. No crown. No throne. Only peace. For a long moment, she simply watched him holding her daughter beneath the rising sun. The last human. The man she was taught to fear. The man who became their home. And for the first time in many years, the queen no longer felt alone in the universe.